Hello everyone, this is going to be my process video for my gouache raccoon girl illustration. Here I have a few little drafts and sketches and studies of raccoons, and the illustration I ultimately went with was the one you saw at the very beginning. I believe I'm using I think it's a hot press illustration board. I'm not sure what the brand is. I'll have to link it down below, see if I can find the name of it. But I'm doing a kind of like an outline / cutout of the reflections on the patent leather / like shiny spandex. And for this kind of stuff, usually I just look up reference. I have done it a few times, so I kind of have it in my memory where the wrinkles and the shiny stuff is supposed to go. But always have reference with you if you're not too sure what you're looking at. It's always good to go back and kind of practice it again, especially if you're using some medium that you've never used before. I think here I'm using a jet black, and I think there's also a carbon black, because you can see that it's kind of leaning cool on one side and warm on the other. I will be adding purple and pink. It's kind of like an undertone to the leather here. As for supplies for this particular illustration, I do a little bit of mixed media, I believe. It's mostly gouache, and the brand I like to use the most is Holbein and this American brand, the Da Vinci gouache. I know a lot of people aren't aware of it, especially if you're not from the United States. It's actually made locally in California, I believe, and they're reasonably priced, and they sell nice big tubes that you kind of don't usually find unless you're buying like a titanium white or a jet black or something like that. They're a really great brand to go into because they're just so affordable, at least if you live in the United States. And their variation, they don't have as much like color variation as like something like Holbein, which I know they kind of specialize in, you know, semi-animation style colors. You have a lot of pastels, maybe some metallics and stuff like that. But this brand has like your good core basic colors that you can just kind of mix any color into. And they're fairly reliable, and they don't kind of, they don't goop up like the honey-based ones, where if you live in a humid climate, that would be a big problem. These are just kind of like a good solid gouache to kind of get started with if you live in the area. So here I was kind of debating whether I was going to give her more muscle tone than maybe we're used to seeing, because I think when you have something like shiny leather or shiny spandex, it's always like, how much detail do I go into it? And I feel like the fun part of shiny spandex is like, let's get all the details, let's get all the reflections, let's get some color in there. And it's really fun to kind of work out what you're going to put in here. In this illustration, it's like, you know, she's a burglar, and she has the raccoon hair, and the raccoon has the little raccoon mask, and so does she. And it's going to be like an old school spotlight that has like that blue rim from the glass, from like blown glass that you get from back in the day, where you'd actually see this kind of almost neon blue rim, and maybe a bit of color shifting depending on how old the light bulb is. And I think it's just like an old-timey artifact that you don't get in like modern light bulbs, at least from what I've seen from car chases on TV. Not that I see that many anymore. And then I decided to put the wall at kind of like an angle, because I feel like it would just draw your eye up to the head of the character, so it creates kind of like this pyramid shaped composition where the light kind of has this kind of blurry effect, where it makes less contact with the wall. So the closer the light is to the wall, the sharper the line is, and the farther away, the more blurry it is. And that's kind of stuff that I like to kind of put in an illustration where it's like, yeah, the style is very cartoony, but I still want things to follow kind of like your basic physics or your basic color theory and light logic and all that kind of stuff that you'd see in real life. And it's just always more fun to have a cartoony type of person kind of living in this semi-real world.
So as for the brush that we're using here, it's an Escoda Ultimo series. It comes in a set of 3. I'm not sure if I got the set of 3 or 6, but they're really great brushes. I love Escoda brushes. Unfortunately, a lot of their sets I can't get because I live in the United States, and they have some semi-exclusive things that they sell out there in Spain that I can't get a hold of. But this is a set that you can definitely get a hold of if you live pretty much anywhere, I think. I think this particular set is available anywhere. And you don't have to buy the whole set. You can just get individual brushes. And I would suggest skipping numbers because you want something kind of small, you want something medium, and then you want something big to fill in all of the areas that you'll probably be painting on. And that's a really nice brush that holds a good bit of water. It holds a sharp point, and the fact that it's a travel brush to me makes it really attractive because I could just take it anywhere. You get used to a supply and you just want to take it everywhere you go. And when you have this kind of substitute that doesn't hold up to the brushes that you use at home, you kind of get disappointed, or if you're having a bad day, you can't really work around it. So, I like to use brushes that I travel with as well as the ones that I use at home for the sake of not having to kind of learn a new skill or having to get used to a new tool. This brush right here, I got from the Heikala set. It's a Holbein brush with a little clear handle. Those are really hard to get in the United States, but you can get them off her website, and I think she sells them in a set. I don't think her art box set is available anymore, it's absolutely beautiful and great. She's got those Rohklinger, I'm not sure how you say that, the German waterproof brushes in these beautiful colors. Anyway, yeah, those are great. But you can definitely get a brush that's equal in performance and size in any brand, really. It's a synthetic size 6 or 8, something like that. And then right here, I'm using a liner brush or a rigger brush, and this one's by Princeton. I love rigger brushes. They hold a lot of paint, and they give you this kind of control, which is it's like a script liner, like the old school pinstriping brushes. And for some reason, this over like a normal round brush just serves me so much better because I can get those long sweeping lines without running out of paint. And also I can kind of wiggle the brush a little bit and get a little bit of mixture in there so that I can blend an edge. And it supplies enough paint and enough control that you can get really nice blends in there. So this is the pink and purple scheme. I think it makes sense. I think at the end it ultimately does make sense. It kind of like shifts from one color to another, and doesn't look too mismatchy, I don't think. Or maybe it does, I don't know. Anyway, so here with the shadows, I wanted them to be sharper on one side and then blurrier on the other side. Kind of like when you have a spotlight on a wall and you put your hand there, and the further your hand is from the wall and I guess theoretically farther away from the light, you get this kind of blurry effect. And the closer your hand is to the wall, the sharper the shadow line is. So that, I think I did that here. I'm not sure if it's super noticeable. Also, there's a lot of stuff you can play around with when you have a nice big shadow on a figure, on the face, or in an object. I feel like that's a good place to explore a little bit of color shifting and maybe something you've never done before with a shadow. I mean, for this particular illustration, I went with something, semi-realistic and wanted shadows to kind of do the thing that I wanted them to do, which is kind of like a film noir situation, with a bit more color in it. I think typically when I do other images like illustrations of like portraits, stuff like that, I have a bit more fun there. But I wanted this one to be kind of a straightforward illustration, something kind of like a scene out of a cartoon, or maybe like a cover image of an American comic book, something along the lines of that. So here's a little bit of a tricky part. I'm doing this shadow and I'm blurring the edges here to get that kind of in the distance found item effect. And I have to do those boots that have to kind of tell you that the light is affecting them. So I tried my best to get those boots to conform to the lighting and to the texture they're made out of. I decided not to do super shiny boot leather. And here I have I forget what kind of ruler this is, but it has like a little groove in it. And it allows you to make straight lines if you kind of hold one item, like one brush, and then your kind of stabilizing pen so you can make a straight line. It's a little bit hard to get used to. It's like an old school animation tool. It's not the actual ruler. But I kind of made it work with this particular brand. And I'm glad it has a groove in it because I think the groove is actually there to protect your hand from getting cut when you make a cut with this ruler. But I just used it as a straight edge painting ruler, which is really hard to do. It's really hard to paint straight lines with a brush. So it's a good tool to kind of get used to if that's what you want to do traditionally. Obviously, digital has made everything a lot easier, but there's stuff that is missing with digital, which is that texture that you have to kind of manufacture out of nowhere. And gouache is like that happy medium between traditional, I would say, and digital, because it kind of looks very similar. In effect, you can definitely make an illustration look like it was made digitally with gouache. So here I'm adding a little bit of details to these boots. I didn't want them to be black and that shiny leather because I feel like it's too samey. So something a bit more contrast here. And of course, the best part of every painting is taking off the tape. And of course, a bit of paper with it, because you didn't anticipate that happening. So a bit of finishing touches here. Sometimes I do this thing where I'm like, I'm done with it. I need to take this tape off right now. And then I go back and I actually finish the illustration. I don't know why. It's kind of like a backwards way of doing it, but I think most of the stuff that has to go out to the edges is done anyway. There's that rigger brush doing the bit of blending that I was talking about earlier. It really is a great brush. I've purchased at least 6 or 7 versions of this brush from different brands to see which ones are better. And, I think I like all of them almost. I wish there was something like this with a more flat surface on it instead of just like a point, because the flat really allows you to do that blending a bit more. Adding some pink here. I don't know if I keep that pink or not, but trying to separate it from that shadow line back there. So here I have one of those Velvet Touch Princeton brushes. This is a long round, and these are great. I think the long rounds kind of work better when they're smaller and not when they're longer, because I think the bristles don't, at least the ones that I've had, they don't kind of complete themselves at the very end. You kind of get this little bit of a jagged edge. But the small ones are great for detail work. As you can see here, these hands are, I don't know, all the fingers fit probably in 1/2 inch measurement or so. And I'm here just adding more pinks and purples into that shadow line so it can kind of curve and move the form around, give it that 3-dimensionality. All right, and here we're nearing the end of the video. I'm gonna give a little look at what my palette looks like. I think it's a bit sloppy, but that's how they all end up looking after a good mixture of paints. And let me know if you guys have any questions on the process that I didn't mention here. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.